And now part two. Okay. Moving on to this very long letter. Then he moves on to quote some of what I said in a response that I made earlier. And basically I say the concept of the fall is an incredibly abusive one. Sins of the fathers visited on the sons, things like that. Having to kiss the ass of Jesus to get back to God. For example, if you go online and Google the term kissing Hank's ass, you'll find a good thought experiment with if someone came to your door and said, oh, hey, would you like to kiss Hank's ass? And then you say, well, who's Hank? Well, he's this person who I can't give you any real evidence for, but if you don't kiss Hank's ass, he's going to send you to hell forever and stuff like that. So you can Google that at your leisure. And then I say the concept of sex, that the concept of the fall led to the belief that the concept of sex being led to the view that sex was evil because the sex could not occur before the fall. And then this person named Mark comes back and says that he sees nothing inappropriate about the sins of the father being visited upon the sons. In the biblical sense that the sins of the progenitors often lead to bad consequences for us. Well, the Bible doesn't talk about it in that standoffish amount of language. It's not just about bad consequences, it's about responsibility. Basically, there's the general Christian view that we are responsible for the sins of Adam and Eve, and that we have to come to Jesus, each one of us, because we are partly responsible for the sins of Adam and Eve. And is it right for children to be held responsible for the sins of their parents? Not really. And anyway. Okay. And then Mark goes on to say, it is logically impossible to show God to be immoral, since if God exists, he is the foundation of morality. Well, if you're basing your logic on illogical things and on a wall that you're unwilling to pass because you don't want to lose faith in Christianity, then, well, anyway, the basic problem with saying that it's logically impossible to show that God is immoral because if he exists, he's the foundation of morality. That type of statement is kind of a last resort of someone who is on the intellectual defensive. This is apparently one of the boundary lines you're unwilling to cross, and it just shows the weakness of your position. Because it's absurd to think that just one creature defines all of morality. And it also is even more absurd when, we observe that the God of the Old Testament was basically a despotic bastard. And the God of Catholicism is a creature that condones mass child rape and advocates and supports past and continuing child rape through an institutionalized celibacy. The celibacy results in the mass child rape. And so, and covering up and all that stuff. So if Catholicism is true, then mass child rape is moral and completely justified because God's anointed, when they rape children, they're God's anointed, and so therefore that's moral because they're God's anointed. The end. But if you are willing to take a step back and examine how absurd, immoral, and stupid that is, then you're making progress. Now, you could have a God that decides that it's moral to torture everyone from the moment they are born until the moment they die, and then to torture them further throughout all eternity. And you could say, well, that's moral because God defines morality. But that's absurd. That just shows that you're getting wrapped up in words which are confusing you and holding you down. Um, just because you use the word logical and philosophical and evidence and can put them in a sentence doesn't mean that what you're saying is logical or reasonable or probable. Okay? So, do I, as an atheist, appear to have better morals than the God of the Old Testament? Well, because there's been a progression in human morality, a moral zeitgeist which has moved and progressed. And if you go online and Google people like Steven Pinker and Sam Harris, they both talk about this sort of thing. Okay. Is it possible to show that something would be contrary to God's nature? But I do not think that can be shown here. If I can think of something, then let Mark know. Um, Contrary to God's nature? Which God? Whose God? If you say God is the universe and nothing else, then no. But if you say God is completely moral because he tortures everyone for all of eternity, and he defines that as being good because he's God, and we have to say it's good because God defines morality, that's kind of a twisting yourself into pretzels type of bullshit that is very easily rejectable. And so, yes, we do get to define such gods as those to be immoral and worth fighting against. Okay, next. He says that my concern about the concept of the fall leading people to conclude that sex is evil, he says that the Bible does not claim that sex is evil. Well, people who believe in the Bible, plenty of them, do believe that sex is icky and nasty and evil and worth hiding and don't do it too much. Judaism circumcised and because they wanted to dull the sexual senses. Um, if you Google Christopher Hitchens, his views on circumcision, you'll find a reference to a medieval Jewish scholar who showed what circumcision is about. Oh, and then we have the Catholic Church's abhorrence of sex and treating it like it's dirty and evil. And Islam and what it does to people, gender apartheid, keeping women in bags and men like psychological children because they're so afraid of sex. And in Mormonism, we have perverts like Spencer Kimball coming up with books like Miracle of Forgiveness, which is essentially a hate-filled, angry book about most what are otherwise positive aspects of human sexuality and being alive. And, you know, people like Kimball in Mormonism talking against masturbation, oral sex, sex before marriage, um, and even sex in marriage. You shouldn't really like it too much, and you shouldn't engage in oral sex if you're married because it might be too fun. And it's dirty and unclean, according to the Mormon prophet Spencer Kimball. Isn't that nice? And I have a separate video about that. Um, so, and all these people, all these churches, they believe in the Bible. They say they do. They do. So you claiming it's not a biblical concept doesn't follow. Um, Next. Let's see. Evolution requires theism. No, it doesn't. The more people believe in evolution, the less theistic they become. When science was first starting out on a roll, early part of the Enlightenment, more and more people were theistic. But as people learn more about science and evolution, and even as people learn more about religion, the less theistic they become. The people who know the most about religion are the atheists. Reading the Bible can make you an atheist. Once you read the crap in the Old Testament, the despotic, evil crap that the old God of the Old Testament advocated, well, if you're not an atheist, then you're a sociopath or something. And there are a certain percentage of sociopaths in this world. So I guess we shouldn't rule that out for people who believe that the evils in the Old Testament are morally good because God gets to define morality. So, so it's either a sociopathic statement or the statement of someone who is so wrapped up in their own beliefs they can't see how stupid they are and how they're being tied down, essentially.